back. DJ Vic Vapor with you. And we've progressed pretty good here. We're getting a good understanding of what it's going to take to perform live with Bitwig Studio. So let's get into some of the really important preparation aspects of what it takes to perform live. So we talked about stems, and in this video I want to kind of go a little bit more into detail about how I prepare stems, or how I think about stems as far as getting them organized, exported, and ready for a live show. So I'm going to go ahead and change the screen here real quick so we can jump inside of Bitwig Studio. There we go. So now we're inside of Bitwig Studio, and I've got a project here that's not, I mean, it's a groove. It's somewhat a full track, but it's not a completed track. But I just wanted to use this particular project for our course here because, one, it's available, so, and it's free. So I'll have a link for you if you want to download it in the description below and work with it yourself. I have it up on one of my sites that you can download it for free. And two, I don't want any copyright issues with YouTube, so I wanted to use on my own original material. And I don't have a lot of projects that are 100% complete that I haven't already released, or they're in the process of being released. So I don't want to have, you know, as the video has a life on YouTube, I don't want to have any copyright issues. But this particular project, of course, I don't really intend to release. It was just something I was kind of working with, brainstorming a couple ideas, and it's a good project, and it's perfect for our tutorials and our course here. So having said all that, what we're looking at here is a track that's been kind of condensed. So I talked about stems. You know, most projects, when you look at a complete project, you'll have anywhere between 30 to maybe upwards of 60 individual tracks and elements that can, you know, take up quite a bit of space on your hard drive. So we need to condense those. And one of the ways you condense things is you just kind of group them. So we've got like a synth group here. It's got 2 or 3 different elements to it, and they're all into a group here. So, and the way you want to do that is you just highlight a couple things, say like the bass and the vocal, and then you just right click, add to group. Now I'm not going to group those, of course, but I just wanted to show you how you would do that. So, and then once you get, you know, your different elements groups, say like all your drum elements, all your bass elements, synth elements, vocals, and whatever, however you want to organize it. For me, like I said, I try to keep it within 8 different channels here because that's what I have to work with on the APC 40 here. And because this wasn't a 100% completed track, we've only got the, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is good. It's good for the course. We've got 5 elements that we're going to work with and organize here. So let me see. One of the important reasons you don't want to take a complete track, let's say, you know, if you have a completed track, it's all in here, it's inside of Bitwig Studio, it's all ready to go, it sounds amazing. One of the reasons I would steer away from taking a complete track out to a live performance is, one, typically that's going to be just really getting after your CPU, because a full track is probably pushing your CPU, you know, into that 50 or 55% range, especially on the laptops these days. And you just don't want to have any risk associated with performing live and having the audio drop out. Secondly, once the track is done playing, most importantly, you know, once that track is done playing, if you're trying to perform it as it is in your session, it's going to stop. And the music's going to stop. And then you're going to have this awkwardness with your audience wondering why the music stopped. Because, you know, of course, in Bitwig, we can have multiple templates or sessions open, but each one has to have its own dedicated activated sound. So no matter what you do, the sound is going to stop, especially if you're using a full session. So what we want to do is export these stems out and prepare them into the mix view, where we'll get our set lined up, and I'll show you how that kind of progresses. So when you think of stems and exporting them, we've got our 5 groups. I've got everything leveled the way I want it. One of the most important things that's easily overlooked when you're dealing with exporting stems is your master track. So maybe during the process or the creation of your project, you've put a couple elements on your master track, like a limiter, maybe, compression, whatever you got on the master track that's there to sweeten the sound, to help it sound closer to what it would sound like when it's a final product. Well, when you're exporting stems, we want to turn these elements off. The master track elements, we want to turn those off. And I know initially, having done that, when you export the stems, it's probably going to create a little bit softer volume or a little bit lower volume, but we'll work with that later. That's an easy fix moving forward. What happens though is if you leave those elements on there, then you're just going to get this oversaturated, really high volume sound for all the individual elements. And when we put them all back together, it's not going to sound as cohesive. It's going to sound a little distorted and, just out of place. So just be aware of what's on your master track when you're exporting. So now the exporting aspect itself, another important thing here is to be extremely organized. Make sure that whatever you've grouped is labeled. And I'll show you why, because when we go over here to File and we come down to our Export Audio, now this menu pops up and we want to know exactly what we've got here. So if we're labeling our individual groups, our tracks appropriately, we know exactly what we're dealing with here. So here we can choose a couple different options. We can say, okay, I want to export it as a master. That would be one whole track, no individual elements. And now I can also say I just want to export the ambient perks, the vocals, the bass, the synth, and the drums. And that's kind of the goal here, is we want to export these individually. So once I've selected, say, like the drums to export first, I would go ahead and choose a destination, leave the dither alone, leave, the 24. Most of these settings I really don't monkey with. They're kind of, the defaults are kind of fine for me. If you're a little bit more advanced and you have specific, desires in mind, I guess you can change those, but for me, I just leave them alone. So drums, and we're going to choose our destination to the desktop, and here we can label it. Right now it's got the full project title on it, but what I want to do is I want to label it drums, and most importantly for me is now I want to create, after the drums, I want to tell myself what the beats per minute are, the BPM. So I can see up here, it's kind of grayed out and faded, but it's 121. So I do drums 121 BPM, and now I can go ahead and hit the export, or OK to export, and now it's sending that out to the desktop with all that information. So that is preparing, creating, and exporting stems. So let's go on into the next video and talk a little bit more about how we're going to arrange those to get them ready for a live performance.